Welcome everybody to the North Fair Oaks Community Council for the month of July 2020. Thank you all. Thanks to the Office of Community Affairs for the efforts to put the meeting together. It's always great to have the resources and we appreciate those. Mitzi, if we can get started with roll call, please.
Of course. Chair Everardo Rodriguez.
Here.
Vice Chair Juan Carlos Prado.
Here.
Councilmember Beatriz Cerrillo.
Here.
Councilmember Linda Lopez. Councilmember Blair Whitney.
Here.
Councilmember Jennifer Ruiz. And Councilmember Rosaura Lopez.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi. Is there any public comment?
There's no written public comment from my end. Sandy, is there any public comment?
There are no public comments on the Zoom call. Is there any public comment, Victor, on the line?
There are no public comments at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ever.
Thank you all. In that case, we'll go on to item number 3, which is a recommendation that will require action on off-street parking exception at the address 823 on 6th Avenue, Redwood City. The exception would allow for the maintenance of an existing one covered parking space where 2 covered parking spaces are minimum requirement associated with a proposed addition to the rear of an existing single family residence, which was built in 1948 with only a 1-car garage. No changes are proposed to the front of the house. An off-street parking exception is required since there is insufficient room for the sides of the house to construct an additional covered parking space. And we'll have a presentation on this item by Mr. Dennis Aguirre, planner.
Good evening, honorable members of the council. I'm Dennis Aguirre, and I'm the project planner for this off-street parking exception request. Let me put up my presentation now. Can you see it? Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, this is from the applicant and owner, Jessica Britt, and it's an off-street parking exception because her family wants to add another bedroom at the back of the house. The existing house is 1,477 square feet, and it's at 823 6th Avenue in North Fair Oaks. There was an existing 249 square foot garage. And this vicinity map locates it in the neighborhood of North Fair Oaks, right in the middle of the 6th Avenue block. And it is bounded by Bay Road, Spring Street, and 5th Avenue. And the neighborhood is predominantly single-family residential residences, homes, with typically 1-car garages. So that is really the flavor of that existing neighborhood. The proposal we have before you is to construct a rear new bedroom, master bedroom. It's actually a relocation of their existing master bedroom. And it consists of a 583 square foot single story rear addition. And that is going to actually just blend in with the existing design of the house so that it's really going to look like it's part of the original design. And the off-street parking exception is requesting that the waiver, a waiver be allowed of the existing covered parking space right now, and to, a waiver of required one covered parking space in addition to the existing one, and just to continue with the use of the existing one-car garage. The off-street parking exception is triggered because with the increase in the bedroom count of the residents, two covered parking spaces are now required. Site plan shows you the existing conditions, and the shaded portion is where the addition is going to be located. Again, entrance is from 6th Avenue. The existing setbacks are compliant with the S73 zoning district where this is located. Front setback is 26 feet. The side setbacks are 5 feet, and right now there's over 30 feet of rear setback. With the addition, the setback is going to be, I think, 20 feet. So everything is compliant with zoning regs except the parking. The existing height is 15 feet. So let me just start scrolling here. The existing height is 15 feet, and that'll be maintained with the new addition. Maximum height and the S73 is 28 feet, so that the height complies also. I'll have a table to show you the compliance with the zoning standards. Existing floor plan shows you a one master bedroom and one bedroom, and a nook and kitchen. The proposed floor plan just pushes back that master bedroom at the back. The reason for that is the family expansion. I think that's going to be a 3-member family, and so the 2-bedroom configuration right now is going to be tight, and that's why they want this addition. The side setbacks are going to be maintained, especially the left side is going to be maintained. The right side setback actually is going to be a lot more than the minimum required. I'll show you with the table. The existing elevations, pretty much standard one single-story residence in the neighborhood, and with gable roofs and standard window and door locations and design. With the proposed elevations, really not much difference with the addition, because it just blends in with the existing configuration and the setup of the residence. Mm-hmm. The proposed roof plan shows you that there's going to be some gable roofs involved at the back. So it just blends in with the existing roof structure. Here we see that the project complies with all of the development standards except the parking, of course. The minimum lot width, there are no changes with the minimum lot width and lot area, and also the front yard setback. The minimum your rear yard setback is now going to be 20 feet 2 inches, so that still complies. And the right side setback, like I told you now, with that addition, it's actually a really good right side setback at 21 feet. The minimum left side setback is still maintained at 5 feet, and building height is at 15 feet. The lot coverage is 38%, where 50% is the maximum, and the maximum floor area is well under the maximum allowed of 2,717 square feet. So just photos of the neighborhood. That is the left photo is the subject site, and the bottom photo on the right is the neighboring neighboring residence, 819 6th Avenue, and that was actually granted an off-street parking exception approval back in 2015. for another bedroom, I believe. And another shot of the neighborhood. And typically that's what you see there, one-story homes with the one-car garages. So with that, staff is asking the council to conclude that the required findings for the off-street parking exception can be made based on that the establishment, maintenance, and/or conduction of the off-street parking facilities as proposed are as nearly in compliance with the requirements set forth in the county zoning regs, section 6119, which is parking, as are reasonably possible, and also that the establishment, maintenance, and/or conduction of the off-street parking facility as proposed will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in said neighborhood. So that ends my presentation, and I can answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Do council members have any questions in this regard for Mr. Aguirre?
I do.
Go ahead,
I didn't hear the mention or on the prints the actual square feet of the lot itself. How big is the lot?
It's 5,450.
Okay, so it's slightly larger than your standard 5,000. Am I correct?
Correct. Over an additional extra 450 square feet based on the minimum required 5,000 square feet for S73.
Okay, and can you remind me again the proposed addition? How many square feet is that going to add?
583. Let me give you the table. Oops, sorry. Here you go. So you have the maximum allowed coverage, which is 50%. Right now they're at 1,477. So after the addition of 583 square feet, it's going to come out to 2,060 square feet.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot coverage. I'm sorry. The maximum floor area is 2,717. So with the addition, again, it's the same as a lot coverage, 2,060.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome. Also, I forgot to mention that trying to expand the existing garage is going to be really prohibitive because there's going to be a lot of structural change. So that's really not feasible.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? In the meantime, I can ask Mr. Aguirre, were all the surrounding neighbors notified of this proposed permit?
Yes, no comments from any neighbors at all.
Great, thank you. And do you know if any of the front trees are going to need removal at all?
No proposed removal of any trees.
Great. Any other questions from council members?
No.
Should I raise my hand?
Go ahead, Blair.
Okay. My name is Blair. The question I had was, the only concern I would have is when people are adding something that might turn into an Airbnb and generate like a lot of activity. It sounds like this is just a family that's growing, but would we have any indication if someone was building something that's going to be like a vacation rental or like a mini hotel room?
No, not really, but we base it on the application form that they submit and a brief description of the project. And from my consultation with the owner, this is really strictly for the accommodation of the addition to the family. So it looks like they're going to be 3, and that's why they want to accommodate the growing family. So no, in answer to your question, no, this is not going to be an Airbnb project in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Any other questions from council members? I don't see any hands raised. So is there any public comment on this item?
Okay, so we're now going to open this for public comment on item number 3. Are there any raised hands on Zoom? Now would be the time to do so. Okay, I don't see that. And Victor, are there any raised hands or comments on the phone line?
There are none.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thanks very much. So I can entertain a motion from any of the council members in this regard, since we need to take an action on this item.
I move that we vote to approve this exemption for the parking space.
I'll second that.
Okay. I should ask County Council Tim if this motion statement is sufficient.
Yes, unless the council wishes to make any comments on the application, you can simply have a motion to recommend approval as recommended by staff.
Great, thank you, Tim. Okay, in that case, Mitzi, if you can take the votes.
Of course. Chair Everardo Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Juan Carlos Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Beatriz Cerillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Linda Lopez, Councilmember Blair Whitney,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennifer Reese, Councilmember Rosaura Lopez.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Mitzi. Thank you again, Mr. Aguirre.
You're welcome.
We will go next to item number 4 on the agenda. This will be an update from the Department of Public Works and the North Fair Oaks Road projects.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, honorable council members. My name is Gil Terrell. I'm the principal civil engineer of San Mateo County Public Works Department, Engineering Division. I guess the first item I want to talk about is probably Loyola Avenue. It's probably the one that's probably has less questions, so I'll probably do that one first.
Excuse me, Mr. Terrell, if you can hold on for a minute. So I think we were supposed to start by introducing Mr. Coavo.
Hi, yes, this is Coavo.
That is okay. If that
Sure,
is
no
okay,
problem.
would like to start with his introduction, and then we will proceed to your presentation, Mr. Terrell.
Hi, everybody. My name is Coavo, and I'm the new Deputy Director for the Public Works Department in the Road Services Division. I came to the county after working with the County of Santa Clara, Roads and Airports Department. I've actually started my career here with San Mateo County Public Works about 30 years ago. And after spending a lot of times elsewhere, I was able to come back here and hopefully finish my career here with a lot of wonderful people and projects that are happening now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gil so he can move forward with the 2 project update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vo, and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the first project I guess I'm going to be talking about is the Middlefield Road Improvement Project. The last time the Department of Public Works came and gave an update, I believe, was in November 2019. So a few things have happened since then. Okay, for those who don't know of the project or weren't on the council possibly back in November, I'll just give a brief description of the project and just go through the slides as we go. So the project limits and key components. Some of the work entails roadway improvements. That would be from between Pacific Avenue to Fifth Avenue.
Gil, this is Jim Porter. You've got the Loyola PowerPoint up. You might want to put the Middlefield one up.
Let's see. Maybe I'll start with the Loyola one first then. So the Loyola Road Reconstruction Project is actually one that we're going to be moving forward to construction probably in about 2 months. It's between El Camino Real and Glendale Avenue. It's part of the North Fair Oaks area priority list. There's about 27 streets on the North Fair Oaks priority list. And the first slide here shows the first 15 that we've already constructed. On the second slide here, Loyola is number 19 out of 27. The last reconstruction we completed in the area was 7th Avenue between Middlefield Road and Park Road. Loyola between El Camino Real and Glendale Avenue is the next one on the list. And after we're done with Loyola, we will then proceed to seeking input from property owners on Encina Avenue if they wish road improvements on their street, and then subsequently 16th Avenue. So we're a little bit past the halfway point of all the streets. We're at number 19 out of 27. This slide here shows the geographical location of Loyola. It's about 2 blocks to the south of Fifth Avenue, and it's between El Camino Real and Glendale Avenue. And it's also 1 block away from Amherst Avenue, which we reconstructed several years ago. If anybody wants to see what the final product of Loyola is going to look like, Amherst would be a good street to take a look at. Okay. This slide over here shows the road standard for Loyola as well as Amherst. They both share the same road standard. Basically, property owners have the option to vote for either a 2-foot wide or 3-foot wide gutter or a 22-foot wide roadway or an 18-foot wide roadway. In this case, the property owners on Loyola voted for a 22-foot wide roadway and 3-foot valley gutters. Slide over here is the actual existing conditions on Loyola today. You can basically see some water ponding on one side of the road. This is something we're going to be addressing with the road improvements. And I'm not sure if you can see in the photograph, but near the middle of the photograph, you can see some white spray paint marks about 3 feet separated from each other. That's exactly where the valley gutters are going to go. So this is what you see now, and the next slide is what it's going to look like probably 3 months from now after the construction is complete. So this is a rendering of what the road is going to look like probably by early October when the construction work is completed. We're going to have 3-foot wide valley gutters on either side, a 22-foot wide reconstructed road from lip of gutter to lip of gutter, having a crown to the road directing surface runoff to the valley gutters such that we get positive drainage down the street to existing catch basins at Glendale. Okay. The timing of this project, we had gone to the community or to the property owners. We had set up a public meeting in February 2020 where we gave a description of the project, gave them a description of how to make sense of the surveys that we mailed to them to vote on different choices. in March of 2020, we determined if the project had enough votes based on front footage of property owners, which improvements they wanted. During the spring of 2020 is when we actually designed the project. It took several months for our design team to design it. And then subsequently, we went out to advertisement and bid, which we lined up a contractor to perform the work. And we plan on going to construction, hopefully at the end of August. There's an actual sewer improvement project that's underway. The Fair Oaks Sewer Maintenance District actually has a project to upgrade their sewer main along Loyola, and they're taking advantage of doing that work before our project to make sure that they don't have to cut into the roadway after we're done with our project. So we're being diligent in terms of getting all that work done. Cal Water also took the initiative to do work on their facilities, their water services on Loyola, so that once we come in, there shouldn't be any other utilities coming in and cutting into the roadway. And that is it for Loyola in terms of an update. If anybody has any questions.
I do have one question. Thank you, Mr. Terrell. And the question I have is, how does the selection for reconstruction works on each street? Is it by the physical condition or the most damage, or how are those streets selected?
Maybe Jim can chime in on this one in terms of the process that the county went through. I believe it was back in 2001 where there was an analysis for all of North Fair Oaks, and there was a ranking of the roads in terms of which ones would be worked on based on their condition and existing drainage facilities along those roads.
Sure. So although I wasn't around back in 2001, at that point, the Department of Public Works did a survey of North Fair Oaks and looked at the roadway conditions of some of the streets that basically didn't have any structural section, meaning no base. It was just sort of rock and oil over the years, and those streets that had drainage problems. That list was brought to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors adopted this list with these priorities. So we've been year over year, or as funding becomes available, completing the reconstruction list. So that's a little bit of background. And once we get through this list, we will do this again, I'm sure.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in this regard? Yeah.
No, Blair has his hand up.
Oh, please go ahead, Blair.
Yeah, my name is Blair Whitney. Two questions. First one, I know that there's a bunch of fiber optic trenching and stuff going on. Was that included in the other utilities to get stuff underground and not have to rip up the street?
So in terms of fiber optics, I'm not familiar with fiber optics playing a constraint on this project. We had done some potholing on the project. Potholing is a term for digging some exploratory holes to see how deep existing facilities are under the pavement, to see if there's any potential conflicts with our proposed work. The road reconstruction work basically goes down about a foot below the pavement, and we go in with these giant rotor tiller machines when we reconstruct the road and pulverize the existing pavement and mix in cement powder into the base material. And then any utilities that are less than, let's say, a foot or 15 inches, we request that they lower their services. So we had communicated with PG&E as well as Cal Water, but also at the very beginning of our project, or all our projects, we send out utility information letters to all the utilities, including the telecoms, so that if they have any existing infrastructure in the project limits or anything that might be in conflict with the proposed work, that they need to coordinate to either lower their facilities accordingly to be out of our proposed work limits, or notify us of any planned work they have within the project limits. So we were informed, for example, with Cal Water, that they wanted to come in and take advantage of an upgrading their water main and their water services. So about a month and a half ago, they went in and replaced their water main in the middle of the road, and just completed that work. Now it's going to be our Fair Oaks Sewer Maintenance District coming in and taking advantage of replacing their main and reconnecting all the sewer laterals for their project. But for your question regarding the fiber optics or whatnot, there wasn't any proposed work that they have, or any potential conflicts with this project that we're aware of. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Second question, there's no sidewalks, and I know that's a characteristic of Atherton, and across El Camino, there's some of Redwood City that has no sidewalks. But it's kind of weird because I've ridden my bike on that street. There's a few denser apartments, I think on the south side of Loyola or Amherst. I forget, but when I'm biking down there, I see there's a little bit of density, and I don't know, it just makes it a little awkward when people want to do walks and do stuff like that. But
yeah, so Gil, let me take that one. So we have a road standard for North Fair Oaks that was adopted by the board, and that was another process that the department went through, and it was the preference of the community to try to maintain a rural character in those areas. So the standard does not have sidewalks. And just as a matter of information, public agencies typically don't install sidewalks. The reason why you see spotty sidewalks out there is back 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was a vision that there would be sidewalks on a lot of these streets. So as people developed their property, they were required to install sidewalks. Well, fast forward to 2000, the community's desires had changed. They wanted to maintain more of a rural character, and that was dropped out of the standard. So that's why you see those kind of hodgepodge of sidewalks. If a community does want to install sidewalks, there's a process for that. It's called an assessment district. But I hope that kind of explains why you get what you get out there.
Thank you. And I think Councilwoman Rosaura Lopez has her hand raised. Go ahead, Rosaura.
Yes. I have a question. You mentioned that when you have a list to work, on the different streets that is not in good condition, and when you finish that list, you said it's going to make a new list. When do you think that new list or that new survey is going to come to make the new list? So how long we need to wait?
So on average, we've been doing about one of these streets a year. And we've done it with the revenue we've generated through roadway impact fees and gas tax. So that's generally been our average on these roads.
Okay. So you are in a number 19 right now, right?
That's correct. So it'll be several years. I think one thing that we're kind of concerned about right now is we're entering a recession and people aren't driving. So the gas tax that funds road reconstruction is reducing. We're seeing several $1 million of losses this year from the pandemic. So that could have an impact on our ability to speed up our process because there's simply not enough revenue generated to do all these roads.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Oh, well.
Thank you. Any other questions from council members?
Through the chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Beatrice.
Is there any vegetation or trees that need to be removed with this process? Because I know that there's a lot of trees and vegetation on the roads or near to the edges of the road in that area.
There shouldn't be any for this project.
Okay.
Based on where the work is taking place.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a pretty wide road.
Thank you. And I think we can proceed now to the next presentation, Mr. Durrell, with about the Middlefield Road.
Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint on the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. So Mitzi, I'm trying to get it to show on the screen. Maybe I'm doing this wrong.
So you're going to have to share your screen, which is on the bottom.
Okay.
You see the tools in the bottom.
Okay.
And click share screen.
Yes.
And then you should have the option to choose whatever PowerPoint you wish.
Does it show up now?
No, not yet. And it doesn't seem like you're sharing your screen.
Mitzi, if you have the PowerPoint, perhaps you can open it.
Yeah,
up.
I'm pulling it up. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now, Gail. So if you can just tell me when to move to the next slide.
Okay. First of all, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Okay. Okay, so this is an update for the Middlefield Road Improvement Project. The last update we gave was back in November 2019 to the North Fair Oaks Community Council. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the work entails work between the limits of Pacific Avenue to Fifth Avenue. That's for roadway improvements. We also have utility undergrounding work between MacArthur Avenue to Fifth Avenue, as well as sanitary sewer replacement work. This is also for the Fair Oaks Sewer Maintenance District between Douglas Avenue to 6th Avenue. Next slide, please. Okay, these are all the different amenities that are going to be incorporated into the project. We're going to have a new lane configuration. Currently, we have 2 lanes going northbound, 2 lanes going southbound existing. With this project, we're going to convert the roadway to 1 lane going northbound and 1 lane going southbound with a center left turn lane where you, depending on if you're going southbound, northbound, you'd be able to make left turns into side streets or into businesses. We will also have wider sidewalks than existing. We'll have brand new streetlights, PED streetlights. We'll have buffered bike lanes. We will also have high visibility crosswalks. Those are like the ladder crosswalks that are high visible. At unsignalized intersections, we will also have rectangular rapid flashing beacons. They're the kind that when you're a pedestrian, you're at the end of the crosswalk or the edge ready to enter it, you can push a button and these lighted signs start flashing so that when you're a driver driving your vehicle, you can be made aware that there's a pedestrian ready to enter the crosswalk or is already in the crosswalk. So we'll be installing those devices into the project. We'll also be installing 3 separate new traffic signals, new street trees, bike racks, benches, trash receptacles, as well as undergrounding the existing overhead utilities, all the stuff that's PG&E overhead and everything from the telecom companies overhead and putting that underground, as well as installing some green infrastructure, stormwater features. Those are the features that are incorporated at the edges of the bulb outs, the green areas you see, the rectangular green areas next to the bulb outs to try to capture the rainwater and treat it before it goes into the ground. Next slide, please. So this slide here is the finished product of what the road is going to look like, or the corridor is going to look like after all the work is done. You can see that there's going to be one lane going northbound, one lane going southbound, and then a center lane to be used for left turn lanes, whether you're turning left or right, depending which direction you're going. Or you can see the wider sidewalks. You can see the green infrastructure, the vegetation around the bulb outs next to the crosswalks. The bulb outs actually help with the walking times for pedestrians. Because of the shorter distance a pedestrian has to walk, it's less time and safer for a pedestrian to cross the street. There's also new street lights. You can see the new trees that are being planted, and the colored bike lanes, as well as a buffer strip adjacent to the bike lane and the vehicles parked. And that's kind of like to protect bicyclists from the door zone when people are opening their car doors while exiting their vehicles. Next slide, please. So this is like an aerial view looking down where the 3 new signals are supposed to go. One of them is going to be going near the Hurlingham intersection, another one right in front of the clinic, Redwood Junction driveway, and then the third one by Pacific Avenue. And this is all like adjacent to where the railroad tracks kind of cross Middlefield Road. And then near the center of the image here, you can't see it, but there's Northside Street on the next slide. If you go to it, Mitzi, please. This is Northside, where it intersects or it hits Middlefield Road. One of the requirements from the railroad was that we have to install a raised median near the center of the roadway. And the whole purpose of that is to prevent people from making left turns. If you're traveling southbound on Middlefield Road towards 5th, the railroad doesn't want anybody to turn onto North Side, making a left onto North Side. And the same thing if you're traveling southbound, going from 5th towards Costco, going northbound, to be able to make a right turn onto North Side. And that's in the event if a train were to be coming and the crossing gates come down when the signals are activated, that there's no vehicles that could be trapped in that intersection. So this is to prevent any vehicles from being trapped and nowhere to go when the gates come down. So this is for safety measures. Next slide, please. So here's a good example of the rectangular rapid flashing beacons that I was talking about a few moments ago. It's the signs you see on either side. There's some lights, LED lights mounted on those poles right below the pedestrian images on the panel. And as soon as a button is pushed, they start flashing. So if you're a driver in a vehicle, you will know that there's either a pedestrian ready to enter the crosswalk or is already in the crosswalk. It's a very good safety measure. Next slide, please. Parking spaces. So the existing Middlefield Road corridor has angled parking, and the existing situation only allows for 125 parking spaces. After we do our project, we will have 78 parking spaces. So we're losing some spaces because we're going to end up with parallel parking. But what we've done in the past couple of years is we've built 2 brand new parking lots. One of them is located at 2nd Avenue and Middlefield Road. And that one we're gaining 43 parking spaces. And then another parking lot we recently built is at Berkshire at Huntington right off of Middlefield Road. And that one we're gaining 16 additional spaces. So in the end, when you add up the additional spaces gained with the 2 parking lots and from what we have from the project, we're going to end up with 137 spaces, which is slightly more than what's existing. Next slide, please. So this is the parking lot that was newly constructed a few years ago near 2nd, the one that's got 43 spaces. In the background, you can see the mural that the county commissioned a local artist to do next to that building. So this is one of the parking lots to gain some of the parking back. And you can see the existing, in the photograph, you can see the existing angled parking that exists on Middlefield Road. That's going to go away. It's going to end up being parallel parking. Next slide, please. So this is the other parking lot we constructed. This is technically on San Francisco PUC property. Their Hetch Hetchy pipelines literally cross diagonally across Middlefield Road between First Avenue and Berkshire. So if you look at the arrow pointing towards the pickup truck, that's kind of like the alignment almost of the subsurface large water pipelines from SFPUC. And that's actually one of the agencies we need to get permits from or approvals to build our improvements over, just to get their blessing. Next slide, please. Anticipated construction schedule. So initially, when we came and gave an update back in November, we were optimistic that we would be probably in construction in the spring of 2020. That has not happened. And we're looking more at the summer of 2021 now. And the reason for that is it's contingent upon the permit and agreement approvals from the railroad agencies. There's the CPUC, which is the California Public Utilities Commission. You got Samtrans, which basically owns the railroad tracks. Then you've got Union Pacific Railroad, the ones who are actually currently operating on the tracks. They're the ones that you might be hearing late at night when you hear the trains coming through honking, pulling their horns, as well as working with PG&E and SFPUC. SFPUC I just mentioned, related to that one location where that smaller parking lot is, where we have to get their approval for the improvements above their pipelines. We're getting close to finalizing that with the SFPUC, as well as COVID-19 related impacts. And what I mean by that, I mean the impacts that affect the local businesses greatly right now and may continue to affect the businesses up to summer 2021. And depending on where we are in the spring, summer 2021, our department will be working closely with Supervisor Slocum's office to see if it makes sense to move forward with this project or not at that time, depending on where we are with COVID-19 impacts to businesses. And the last thing I think we want is to create a greater hardship to the businesses along the corridor. The typical construction work hours would be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If the contractor who is awarded the project wants to deviate from that, they would need to submit alternate work hours to our department, which we would need to review and approve, which isn't guaranteed. The anticipated construction duration, once it starts, is about 1.5 years. So if hypothetically, if we were to start in the summer of 2021, the actual construction, we would be looking at completion of the work around the fall and winter of 2022. Next slide, please. Okay, anticipated construction sequence. So when the work will take place, the first order of work will probably be undergrounding work in the middle of the roadway, similar to what you might be seeing or what you might have seen what the city of Redwood City did for their portion of undergrounding work currently in construction between Woodside Road and Main Street in Redwood City. They did the undergrounding work first, and then it looks like they're doing the sidewalk and green infrastructure now. But for our project, it would probably be very similar, the undergrounding work, and then the sidewalk construction, the widening of the sidewalks, and additional work on the roadway for the final surface grades. 1, 2, and 3 could be happening around all at the same time. And then after items 1, 2, and 3, then the installation of street lights, trees, and traffic signals would come in. Then we would be coordinating with the railroad. They would come in with their own forces to install their equipment. That would be near the railroad track crossings. That would probably be near the end of the project. And they would be coordinating with our contractor in terms of who comes in and who stays out of whose way to do the work. And then after that, you'd have PG&E and the other utilities, all the overhead utilities then pull their wires. Basically, after all the undergrounding infrastructure is installed under the roadway in the utility trench, under the roadway, the various utilities on the poles will then come in and pull their own wires through the conduits that we installed and then perform that work with their own forces. Then they'll come in and for number 7 and energize the underground system and test it. And then whoever's last on the pole, like let's just say AT&T is the last utility on the pole, then they would be the ones responsible for cutting the pole down to ground zero and then patching the area where the pole was to repair the area to match the sidewalk or where it's installed and whatnot, or remove the pole. And as noted, some of these items of work may be concurrent, but this provides a general idea of the sequence. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of anticipated access during construction, so the way we currently have it in the project bid documents is that we would have the contractor only be able to work on one half of let me rephrase this. Only work on 2 blocks at a time, but only on one side. So basically, if you can envision like a barrier near the center of the roadway or near the center of the roadway, isolating one whole half of the road, and then they'd only be working for 2 blocks. So let's say, for example, we're starting from 5th Avenue going northbound. We'd be doing the block from 5th Avenue to 3rd Avenue, and only one side, either the west side or the east side, and then we would just go and do all the work that needs to be done for those 2 blocks, like the sidewalk work and then the undergrounding work and whatnot. And then when that's done, then we would move either northerly or southerly, depending on which way the contractor wanted to plan his work, all the way to the end of the corridor, and then potentially come back near the beginning where we started the same thing, or then come back the opposite direction. It all depends on how the contractor wants to do that. So the whole reason to do it this way is to try to minimize impacts to businesses, so it's not everybody on the whole corridor is impacted. It's only one side and only for 2 blocks at a time. The other thing we're going to be doing is constructing temporary pedestrian walkways to allow pedestrian access to the businesses as the contractor is working on this new sidewalk widening work. There'll be like little plywood bridges or other materials used for that. There'll be also continued access for delivery trucks and vehicle service to businesses, which will be maintained and will be controlled by flaggers at the work zone entrances and during construction hours. That would also be coordinated with businesses during construction. We actually did a project several years ago on Semicircular Road where the Chavez Market there was impacted, where we had to do wider sidewalks, and we had coordinated with the management there of the Chavez Market to find out when they needed deliveries during the week so that we could schedule our work accordingly, or they had enough supplies in their stores to last a couple of days before they needed access again to their loading dock or for deliveries. So we would be working with with the businesses, our contractor will be working with the businesses as well to make sure that access and deliveries are coordinated during the course of construction. Emergency vehicle access will also be provided during the course of construction. That will not change. And the county will also coordinate with the Samtrans bus service during construction so that bus routes are not impacted negatively. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the work that will happen after the undergrounding work is completed in the roadway and when the utilities have pulled their cables through the conduits, they'll then come up and pull their conduits up from below the ground up into a new junction box and then into an existing service panel along the buildings, and then that will be coordinated at the very end of the project. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the slide where we've made the progress since November 2019. We're able to finalize the plans and specs to 90%. We're about 10% left. And the bulk of the remaining work is related to the railroad related work that's still ongoing, that we're continuing to coordinate with them to provide them the required information they need to approve the design for the work around the tracks and the signalization near the clinic. We've also worked to coordinate to obtain the required permits from the Union Pacific Railroad. That railroad entity actually has notified us that we're looking at April 2021 to get through their process, and we're currently at 65% through that. It's a kind of like an iterative process with Union Pacific, almost like the saying, take one step forward, two steps back, but we're slowly getting there with them. Once we get approval, all approvals from Union Pacific Railroad, then it goes to the California Public Utilities Commission, who then has to provide their approval, which will be around the same time as Union Pacific Railroad. So it'll be April 2021. Working with Samtrans Caltrain, they're one and the same entity. They're the ones who own the tracks. We're 80% completed with working with entering into agreements with them. And we hope to complete that probably in about 2 months from now. Then there's the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. They're the ones who have the Hetchy water pipelines that cross diagonally near First and Berkshire. And basically we've got more or less their approval to do our improvements of their pipelines, and we should be getting something finalized with them by September 2020, in about two months as well. And then there's all the utilities that we're going to be performing work with or coordinating with. That includes Pacific Gas and Electric, AT&T, Comcast, Wave Broadband, and we have to enter cost sharing agreements with them in terms of work that we're doing in their behalf, and to ensure that they're going to be reimbursing us for work that we perform for them, as well as roles and responsibilities defined. And the process for that will probably be around January 2021. And January 2021 is around the same time as when we'll probably, in the perfect, we'll try to have a contractor maybe even on board, or to maybe advertise the project. So we're trying to shoot for that time frame for that. And then lastly, there's the trying to obtain the necessary easements near around the clinic area in order to construct the project. And there's ongoing negotiations with that work, which we anticipate completing around December 2020. And I think that's what I have for an update for Middlefield Road. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Terrell. If council members have any questions, please go ahead.
Yes, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Juan Carlos.
A couple of questions. Obviously, a lot of information, and it's been a very long time coming, over 2 decades since the idea, the concept, the planning initiated with this. And some of us thought that perhaps later this summer, there might be some groundbreaking, but it sounds like we're definitely not anywhere near that. I have a question on the North Side Avenue, which has always been an area of concern, particularly for those of us that live in this part of North Fair Oaks. From what I see in your plans, North Side Avenue will turn into a one-way street.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, can you elaborate more on what's going to happen on the parking? Because that's been a long-standing issue currently on Northside Avenue, because there are some parts that have a 20-minute green curbside color, and then some is red with no parking, and then in some portions there are neither color. So could you elaborate how that's going to look like?
So I can't speak to how the parking might be addressed going forward, but maybe Kwa or Jim might be able to chime in terms of maybe what we might be able to entertain going forward.
Sure. So right now, the project doesn't include any changes to parking on North Side. If there is a desire to change some of the parking limits, that's done through our roads department. So you would send a request to Quavo and his team, and they would evaluate what your request is and go through a typical process. But that's not included in this project.
So as far as things are right now, parking will stay as is. That won't change?
That's correct. This project does not change parking on North Side.
Okay. My other area of concern is the crosswalks, the RRFB. You illustrated there some of the signage. Will some of those flashing lights also be on the ground, or are they only going to be at the side of both sides of the street?
So my understanding is going to be on the side of both sides of the street. It's not going to be in the ground.
Yeah, that's correct. So the trend has been to get away from those ground mounted lighting, because as you notice, we had some on Middlefield. They don't work very well because you're in a pretty tough environment. You get dirt and water in there. So most agencies around here are switching to these above ground RRFBs, I think they're called, but they tend to provide as good or better visual notice of the pedestrians and are just much more easier to maintain.
I've heard some concerns from the signs that you illustrated here, the yellow ones, the pedestrian ones, that sometimes they're too small, or there's not enough flashing lights to where if a motorist is behind a heavy commercial delivery vehicle, they can't see the signs. Could you?
Sure. So the signs that we use, the RRFBs that we use are basically state standard installations. If we find, or if during this project we find that that's not adequate, then we'll assess it. But right now we go with the standard equipment, and then we adjust as necessary.
Okay, and will there be opportunity for us as the North Fair Oaks Council to have input as to how the final product will look like, or the details on that?
What do you mean by product?
Oh, when before installation, before, can we, have a display here of how the actual lights are going to look and how the pedestrian walks will actually look like?
We can do, Kwa, if you could perhaps put together a list of some example installations around that area, then maybe we can show you what it's going to look like and you can take a look.
Okay.
And if you have any further input, we'd be more than happy to consider it.
Okay, thank you. And my last third point is this concept or idea of how everything's contingent. So everything's contingent on something and something else. Is there any clarity with so many agencies involved here that we can actually have, summer of 2021? How realistic is it that we can get all the agencies on board and have everybody coordinated by then?
Well, it's certainly our goal. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over the turnaround time for these agencies. And we're finding that, particularly with the pandemic, we're not seeing as quick turnaround times with the utilities. That being said, these applications were submitted, before the pandemic hit, so they're in the queue. But I guess the answer to your question is we're hoping for the best, but we can't control these agencies. I think the railroads are the largest challenge. They are independent and they're national, and we have very little influence over their timing. So unfortunately, we're kind of at their mercy, but we're doing our best to push this through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions, and I'd like to first emphasize again the importance that this project has for the North Fair Oaks community. I think it is the single most important project that it would benefit the community in several areas. I mean, for one, infrastructure, getting the wider sidewalks and, the better pavement, street lighting, and a tree canopy of some sort. That would be great, but, all of it is related to really opportunities particularly for the businesses along the Middlefield Road corridor that, right now during the pandemic, we can see the effects of not having, a good infrastructure because the businesses are not able to, for example, for the restaurants to pull out, tables out on the sidewalks because they're not wide enough. So they don't have the same opportunities, which is an issue of equity when you compare it to other places in San Mateo County and, of course, several other cities. But also, the issue of health and safety is also very relevant to this project because the width of the sidewalks, of course, doesn't allow, particularly these days under the pandemic, for a lot of foot traffic. Is not very safe. It is inadequate, particularly for wheelchairs or mothers with strollers, etc. And so it is really important for the community again. So I'd like to, request the Department of Public Works to somehow, if at all possible, to try to prioritize this project as much as possible. I know that the County of San Mateo is going through a reevaluation based on equity of infrastructure. And I think this is a perfect example that would qualify, for such for rushing this project through. So I'd like to make that special request. Now, I do have a question, and that's in regards to the funding. I wonder if the funding allocated for this project is in any way, shape, or form in jeopardy or in danger of being insufficient, for that matter, after the delays.
So from my understanding is there is funding available for this project. That's the latest I've heard.
Great. And then could the Department of Public Works consider certain improvements from this project and leave others, for another time? Or is there an alternative for getting things going? And I'm speaking, for example, I'm not sure if, doing the vehicle lane division or implementing the bike racks or the trees or the bike lanes, some of those elements could be worked out in advance while the other things, happen.
Well, unfortunately, we could look at that, but I really don't see that being an option. I think you mentioned earlier the sidewalks are, they're 4 to 5 foot width right now. There's not a lot of opportunity to put a lot of other obstructions in the sidewalks. And I think as Gil pointed out in the schedule, the way that this is going to work is you go in and you do all your undergrounding work first, then you come in and do your sidewalks. And there's a reason for that. You do the undergrounding first because you don't want to trench into your new sidewalks or your new roadways. So it's unfortunately impossible for us to put sidewalks in before the undergrounding because we would have to cut through them to connect to all the businesses. So this is a major project with several steps to it. And unfortunately, they're all combined and they all work together. So unless we were to just delete portions of the project, for instance, not do any undergrounding, then we could do our road work and our sidewalk work fairly quickly. That won't be able to allow us to negate the railroad crossing work, though. In order for us to get this concept, this essentially 2 lanes with a left turn lane through that railroad area and provide adequate turning room into the clinic, we've got to work with the railroad. And unfortunately, they're very hard to deal with. I mean, they take a lot of time. So unfortunately, it's very much tied together if we want to give you the full project as you've envisioned or as we've envisioned and presented to now, up till now.
I understand. Thank you. I believe Blair Whitney has raised his hand. Go ahead, Blair.
All right, I muted myself. I watched Redwood City do their portion of Middlefield, and I think there's a term for people that watch things from their couch and, you know, think that they know how to run the play on the field. I was just either a motorist or a cyclist, and I was kind of frustrated where it looked like they just tore up the street and then just let it sit there for months. And it's like, well, it just appeared to be poorly coordinated. Like they got some lowest bidder construction company that broke ground so they could keep their contract, and then they sent all their workers to another project that was more lucrative. And then right before the deadline where it would cost them money if they didn't finish, then they came back and finished. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it just emotionally, it felt like that watching the project sit there for a long time. I have faith that the county and the Public Works Department are excellent project managers, and that it won't happen on Middlefield like that, where, you know, they tear things up and it just sits there for a long time. I realize there's a lot of moving pieces on a project like this, but if we break ground, I think we owe it to every adjacent business and all the users from the community to finish each segment as quickly as possible, so those 2-block segments don't stretch out into 6 months of 2-lane closures. It's just a comment, doesn't require a response.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do our best to keep this moving fast.
Thank you, Blair. Are there any other questions from council members? I don't see any hands raised. Is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment. And then I'll turn it to Victor.
There are no comments at the moment.
Thank you both. So I guess that's it for this item. Thank you both, Mr. Porter and Mr. Terrell, for your presentation and for answering the council questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go next to item number 5. It'll be the San Mateo County Sheriff discussion regarding 4th of July fireworks activity in unincorporated area of North Oaks and potential solutions. We'll have a discussion led by Captain Christina Corpus and Directive Sergeant David Padilla.
Good evening, North Fair Oaks Council. Good evening, Deputy County Manager mates. My name is Christina Corpus, and tonight Detective Sergeant David Padilla will be co-presenting with me, and he will report out on the actual, he was a part of our our enforcement for the 4th of July, so he can speak to what he saw and what they experienced while they were out in the community. Next slide, please, Mitzi. So traditionally, the 4th of July is, family barbecues, and, you can go to the city of Redwood City and watch their professional fireworks show. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we learned that, there was a lot of illegal fireworks, commercial grade illegal fireworks that people purchased and had block parties with. And so that was, I think, Bay Area wide. In speaking to other commanders and other law enforcement agencies, they had the same they faced the same challenges as we did in regards to the fireworks and actually people being together and not, adhering to social distancing and wearing masks, but being in big crowds together and watching these illegal fireworks. Next slide, please. So what did we do? So we had some internal meetings. We used data from last year and the previous year to really identify what our hotspots were. We put a team together to do that enforcement on that night. And leading up to the 4th of July, we saw an increase of illegal fireworks. We believe that starting, I think it was at the end of May, when kind of the George Floyd incident occurred and then all the protesting happened, there was a large influx of illegal fireworks that were being ignited throughout the peninsula. So we discussed what we would be doing to help quell that or try to actually get the fireworks off of the street. And we put a plan together, and we had an enforcement team out on the 4th of July. But our patrol deputies leading up to it responded to different incidents and actually cited people throughout North Fair Oaks. We also went around and distributed over 3,000 door hangers in the neighborhoods, especially in the neighborhoods where we have those hot spots. So, we put information on it, we put what the fines were, and we actually put a number there as well to try to encourage the community members to call if they see it or hear it or know of anybody that was selling the fireworks. We also did social media postings, and we put up banners throughout North Fair Oaks. Next slide, please. So this year was different from last year. We had the stay-at-home order. The community events that we normally are used to going to were canceled. The display that the city of Redwood City puts on was also canceled due to COVID-19. And we had hit the point where I think people were feeling anxious and wanted to be out because we had been in shelter in place for so long leading up to the 4th of July. No excuses there in regards to why this happened, but these were kind of some of the challenges that we faced and why we feel that this contributed to the increase in the fireworks and the large gatherings. Next slide, please. So our calls for service. So these calls reflect when somebody called 911 to report a firework call. So we had 48. We had 11 more than we did last year, which doesn't seem like a whole lot because just in my experience and what I saw and what I heard, it seemed like it tripled. So when I went back and looked at the stats, these are the calls that reflect when people actually got on the phone and called to report. So I think that there was a lot of community members that just didn't report it. So that's what those numbers reflect. And if you can see that those are other areas that we serve as well, our areas of jurisdiction. So Moss, on the coast, they had a large influx as well. And then for us in North Fair Oaks, we went from 37 to 48. So it was a 30% increase in comparison to 2019. So we worked with Menlo Park Fire, with Woodside Fire, to try to kind of collaborate in regards to the messaging and really putting the word out in regards to the fireworks and the dangers, because it's such a dry season as well. Next slide, please. So we have ShotSpotter technology that helps us detect where fireworks are being ignited at, and then also where there's any gunfire. So this is Firecracker, which is sometimes the distinguishing between the commercial grade and actually somebody shooting a gun. Sometimes the technology isn't 100% accurate. So we do our best to see where those locations are, and if we can find any casings from a weapon, or if we see the residual of a illegal firework. So the ShotSpotter between July 4th and 5th, it only really captured a few incidents, which to me doesn't appear to be accurate to me because of just what I saw and heard, and what the patrol teams reported back to me as well. Next slide, please. So on between July 4th and July 5th, we actually had 5 different incidents throughout North Fair Oaks. Some of the incidents were just one single shot, and then the others were all multiple shots. So in the majority of these cases, our deputies did go out and find casings, which we took a report and then looked for camera footage, and then took those casings and put them, sent them to our lab. Next slide, please. So our field operations. So I will have now Sergeant Padilla give a briefing on what occurred that evening and what he experienced. He worked last year the same. He did the enforcement last year as well. So I let him give his perspective on what the changes were and kind of the challenges that we faced here.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay. Thanks for having me. And so I'll start with our numbers that we had providing the enforcement. It was myself, another sergeant, and 2 deputies. We were teamed up 2 to a car, so we had 2 unmarked vehicles driving around. We conducted a brief prior to driving around the North Fair Oaks just to see what we can see as far as illegal fireworks being ignited. This year compared to last year, we saw a huge difference in the amount of fireworks that were being ignited. During the daylight hours, it was much easier for us to see who's lighting the fireworks, intervene with them, talk to them, educate them, confiscate the fireworks. And our goal initially was to educate them, confiscate the fireworks, and try to de-escalate it without having to issue a citation. And that worked for the most part at the beginning during daylight hours. And I'll give you an example of one incident on Warrington, about mid-block of the 600 block. Myself and my partner were parked there. We observed somebody walk into the middle of the street and attempt to ignite what we know is an artillery shell and put it inside a launcher. We drove up to him, talked to him before he lit it, and what concerned me was he walked up there with his 2 or 3-year-old son in hand, and that's what I talked to him about. He was extremely receptive, apologetic. We confiscated his fireworks, but as the night went on, as it got darker, there was a lot more crowds coming out in that same general area, also in the area of Calvin and Dumbarton and around semicircular. And then there was a few spots near the 100 block of Dumbarton area as well. But as it got darker, we saw the crowds reach, I would say, up to maybe 200 people in the intersections, completely blocking the intersections, and probably much larger fireworks shows than I've seen that were actually organized. The intersections mainly around Halsey, Warrington, Stanford area were completely blocked. Some cars were able to get through in between the igniting of the fireworks. But one of our concerns at that point was if there were any injuries and emergency vehicles had to get in. From my experience and seeing it there, I don't think they'd be able to get in a reasonable amount of time. And we saw that go on, so probably close to, I would say, 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and then it slowed down, and then we were able to drive around and kind of just see the garbage that was left out from the ignited fireworks.
Next slide,
That's what
please.
I have so far happened.
So this is just a visual. I'm sure many of you did see this because you live in the neighborhoods. So this was, these are commercial grade fireworks that people were lighting off. At some point we had even the spectators were helping with crowd control and with traffic control on some of the heavier hot spots that we identified. So it was you know, coordinated on their end, but very difficult for us to go into a large crowd in the darkness when the team attempted to do so. Next slide, please. So again, as Sergeant Padilla had spoken about, the hotspots were along Halsey, between Hampshire Avenue on Warrington Avenue, Stanford. As I stated, you know, there were large crowds of people. People were double parked. People were blocking the intersections to view the fireworks shows. And there's just a map just kind of showing the areas that we identified as being the hotspots. Next slide, please. Again, on Dumbarton and Calvin, another hotspot area. And then we did, the night before, we did have some activity on Arrowhead Lane. Next slide, please. So our highest number of firework activity was between 8 p.m. and 11. Some went on, but this was the majority of the fireworks that went off. We gave 20 citations. We confiscated a considerable amount of illegal commercial fireworks, mortars, P100s, Roman candles, bottle rockets, and other illegal fireworks that our bomb unit took possession of just because of the caliber of fireworks that they had. Next slide, please. So what did we learn? Our lessons learned. So we've already started to plan for New Year's Eve for 2021 and for next 4th of July. You know, what we learned is that with our enforcement, it was very difficult to apprehend anybody catching people lighting them. And then, you know, the fines are anywhere from $500 to $50,000, but that depends on the gross weight of the fireworks that are confiscated. And the laws are prohibited of us right now of incarcerating or putting somebody in jail. So a citation would be handed off. And just because of the current state, we wanted to, we would rather get the fireworks off the street. We did compile a list of where these fireworks came from to help us with our future planning for next year. But additionally, I believe that, you know, this is an opportunity for us to work together and look at what other technology is out there that may help us prior on the front end so we can do search warrants and go into some homes if we suspect that they are selling these fireworks. So that's what we're working at now. We're working at putting a team together to do the investigative work up front, because it's really difficult depending on if we're in the same situation leading up to next year with COVID. And we really want to, do the work up front so we can do as much as we can to stop this from going on. And, what we've learned is there's always room for improvement. There's always, opportunity to work more closely with the community to get their input and, lessons learned. That's what we always look at. We always see how we can try to improve what we did and what we could have done. Next slide, please. And that's what I have now. If anybody, I'm sure everyone has questions, but thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you both for your presentation. Yeah, this year certainly has been the worst for fireworks in my experience, after 25 plus years living here. However, the concern, I think it was a double concern. The concern for, of course, that the fireworks may cause, ignite a fire, etc. That could be devastating to not only one house, but several. But the other, under the pandemic, was the concern of people gathering for those activities, because the couple of times that I saw people burning fireworks, they were, not wearing masks. They were actually stalling traffic on some streets, and so it just posed a real danger. And so one question I have is, out of those 20 citations that you mentioned, were those specific to North Fair Oaks, or those were in various other areas?
Those were specific to North Fair Oaks.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and by all means, I know that it was perhaps statewide, because I saw also videos from LA, from Oakland, all over the place, fireworks. They were a real issue. And I could certainly, see at night while I was taking a walk, several fireworks going off in all kinds of directions. So not to say that North Fair Oaks was the epicenter of it, because I know, many explosions seem to be far off, from North Fair Oaks. But certainly, I think fireworks, for one thing, continue to be a problem even today. For some reason, I guess people have leftovers and they continue to burn them. But I think that routine patrolling may be a good deterrent. And one other question that I had in that regard is, what are the possibilities for sheriff to get backup or reinforcements to increase patrolling, particularly during those dates when there's just a tremendous number of fireworks?
Yeah. So I've had this discussion with my executive team in regards to wanting more resources out there. So my resources are limited right now, but what my goal is to continue to have our patrol deputies, our detectives, and our crime analysts work together to provide that information. So we have a better idea of who is actually the common denominator here. Who are setting these off? Who's possibly selling these fireworks to other people? We had it was on Calvin, where a 20-year-old young man fired off a bottle rocket and it hit him right in the eye, and he almost lost his eye. We referred that case to the district attorney's office for prosecution, just because he needed to go to the hospital, and we weren't going to give him a citation when he was in grave danger and needed emergency medical care. So it's frightening to me that somebody would take their child with them in their hand and then go light an explosive device. It's mind-boggling to me that people behave that way. And I understand that people, we're in this pandemic, but it also made it challenging for us as we were challenged by the community. So it was a very tense at times, as Sergeant Padilla can attest to, situations. So where we kind of wait out, if we get them off, at least get the fireworks, confiscate them, and we know who these people are, then we can do some more work behind it, rather than maybe having a melee, because people would, there was 2 or 4 law enforcement officers and there was 100 to 200 people in a group. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We're reassessing to see how we can avoid that in the future.
Yeah, thank you. And I see Rosaura has her hand raised. Go ahead, Rosaura.
Yes, I want to say thank you. Thank you very much for all what you do for our community, for what you do for us. But I would like to express my concern about the illegal fireworks. And I understand this is a challenge for you, but I really, really concerned about the safety of the community. And but I want to ask you some question because I don't know if you feel that you don't have enough support for this specific date when these activities is happen, and from or because we don't need to wait until somebody's gonna die for these illegal activities. Honestly, it is really, really concerned because it's not happened just today. I mean, this year is have been happening for several years, but these years for the pandemic, increase the number of people who is doing these illegal activities, but their their life is in risk.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you 100% in regards to the concerns. I worked in North Fair Oaks for a very long time, and I formed a lot of friendships with community members. And, I received calls and emails, and it's concerning to me because I see the kids that are in the community as well. And so my proposal is for us to work together and look at how we can maybe think about and strategize on how we can be better. So I'm asking for input from the community, from the council, and maybe looking at ways that we can improve with technology. So there's cameras that would assist us as well. And they're cameras that can be moved around. Obviously, it's a kind of a larger conversation, but the sheriff's office would purchase those cameras, and we could put them up prior, so that would give us another tool of information to where who is possibly igniting these or selling them. So it would be another tool for us. So I'm looking for input and feedback from the council and the community, at ways that we can all work together and how the sheriff's office can really make next 4th of July and leading up to the 4th of July more calming and safer for the entire community.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would like to request to the county to support you in this specific, specific date for the next 4th of July. I would like to see, less illegal activities with fireworks, and also, for the safety for the community. Thank you.
And Juan Carlos has questions too.
Yeah, questions and comments. I live in one of the hot spots that you pointed out here, and well, you can imagine. I have 2 small children and pets, and it was like a war zone out here. We felt sequestered in our own home, and it's completely unacceptable. It really is unacceptable for us to feel in the way that we did, and to see the law enforcement just come, and warn them and tell them to put it away, and then a few minutes later they're up again, and making calls to the sheriff. It seemed like it was in vain. They were going till after midnight. It was just completely unacceptable, really unacceptable. And I had a bit of a confidence because last month you said that there was a task force that was going to be dedicated to this, and obviously there was. But it's very clear that the sheriff's department was overwhelmed. I mean, that's very clear. And I'm glad that Sergeant Padilla outlined exactly what I witnessed in front of my house. The reality was that there's hundreds of people blocking the street, participating in illegal activity, and putting their own kids and family lives in jeopardy. And not only that, but preventing emergency vehicles to come through the neighborhood in case anybody else has any kind of emergency. So I have to say it was very disconcerting to see that, the lack of enforcement. And I know that you said you did give citations out and you gave warnings out. But this went on for many hours, many hours. And I don't want to focus just on things that didn't work out. I want to congratulate you on things that did work out. I did appreciate all the publicity that was done. If there's something I can contribute to that, is that the community in North Fair Oaks many times are very timid or scared to call law enforcement because of retaliation from people that are doing wrong things. And I would just appreciate that the New Year's, which seems to be the other big event coming up for fireworks, or also the use of firearms, which is even worse, that you put it in Spanish and in English, that people can call anonymously, because that's what I feel that all the communication and publicity, which is great, that's been done, but there isn't enough focus on that, and the community is scared to call out because they feel that their name's going to get out there. Whoever's doing this criminal activity is going to retaliate against them. And so it's important to the community to know, no, you're not going to be retaliated against. This is anonymous and this is confidential. No one needs to know that you're calling. So that's one point. My other point is that, living here in North Fair Oaks for a number of years now, and have this recurring event happen every 4th of July, every New Year's, it's always the same people. It's always the same homes. I mean, you have the addresses down. And I mean, who they are. I mean, what homes they're doing the lighting from outside in the street. I don't know how much more evidence you need of who's doing it. The evidence is there. So I just would like to see more enforcement, and I think it's time to step up. If citations are not working, I mean, and they're using commercial grade fireworks, I don't know. I don't understand, what needs to happen in order for you to, enforce the law, basically. So that's basically expressing my concerns from my neighbors and my own family. And I want to stay optimistic and hope that when New Year's comes around, that the sheriff's department will be better prepared and can do some enforcement.
I appreciate you being very candid and telling me how you feel, because I am equally frustrated. And so knowing, I could take this back. And then, I don't know, maybe we can have some other conversations about what the county could do to help support us as well. And with the maybe, looking at, maybe doing something specific to North Fair Oaks in regards to fines, or in regards to, doing having something else added to the enforcement side that we would be able to enforce. I'm looking at different technology where people can possibly text and information, and their number would just come back as like a private number. So I'm looking into that as well, where people will feel more confident, because I do understand that people, they feel that their safety is in jeopardy if the perpetrators find out that they called on them to advise. So I hear it from community members as well.
Through the chair, this is Justin Mates, Deputy County Manager. Yeah, Captain Corpus, be happy to continue our conversations about different strategies and what we can do for next year, because we definitely understand that this was the worst year it's been, and it was a big strain on the community, significant impact on the community. So definitely open to and desiring to continue our conversations.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. As I said, I worked in North Fair Oaks for a long time, and I always feel like it's, we can do better for the community, and they deserve it. They're hardworking people. And I'm willing to explore whatever we can do to make it better for next year.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Captain Corpus. I would say that initially my intention was, or my initial suggestion was to have a study session dedicated to this particular issue. But I think there's still opportunity to table a study session with the Sheriff Department, and perhaps we can talk further about the options and possibilities, so that, because I understand that this is not only on the Sheriff's lap, this is also the community's responsibility to shape up each other and to pass on the message that is necessary. And so certainly our council, it will be more than willing to have further conversations to see, how we can minimize this problem, which is, particularly an emergency and, a health concern to prevent, any accidents or, God forbid, any houses burning. So thank you both again. And Blair, if you can go ahead with your question. We're running out of time, but go ahead.
I'm okay. I lowered my hand. I'm just going to say I did complain on Nextdoor, and that is ineffective. It doesn't change anything. I should have called like the non-emergency number. Oh, well, maybe next year. Yeah,
no, Nextdoor, there were hundreds of complaints in that regard. But thank you. Is there any public comment on this item?
So if there's any public comment on Zoom, that would be the time to raise your hand. And if you're joining us over the phone, please press *9. I don't see any raised hands on the Zoom call. Victor, are there any comments on the line?
Thanks. No, there are none.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. And so finally, for item number 6, do we have a supervisor's report?
Yeah, good evening, council members. This is Maggie Cornejo with Supervisor Slocum's office. I am going to have three things that I want to talk to you about. The first thing is our office is working with HSA to stuff over 700 backpacks for the new school year. And we're doing it a little bit different this year because we are adding COVID-19 related items. We are adding hand wipes, water bottles, face masks, and headphones for all the kids, which I think is pretty cool. We're going to begin the stuffing next Wednesday, and then they'll be going out throughout the weeks. I don't know how many of those backpacks will go to North Fair Oaks, but I will be there when we do deliver them to North Fair Oaks, to the North Fair Oaks families. And the second part of my report is our office highlighted a story of a North Fair Oaks resident. Her name is Ana Juarez. And we called the video was titled Our Community Heroes. It's up on our Facebook and our Twitter if you would like to take a look. It highlights her story of, at the beginning of the pandemic, she took initiative to create masks for over 60 people in North Fair Oaks and started handing them out. And she bought her sewing machine in January and started creating these masks, and now she has a little bit of a business with it. But I thought it was a really good story. It just shows how special North Fair Oaks is and how community oriented it is. And our office is looking for more special stories like this, where it could bring people a smile during these hard times. So if you know of anyone that deserves to have some for us to like kind of get to know and talk to them, please let me know. And then the last thing, as some of you may know, or maybe all of you know, that the Board of Supervisors extended the eviction moratorium, and now the new date will be August 31st. So with that being said, if there's any questions or comments, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Maggie. I don't see any hands raised, but yeah, we'll keep an eye open for community heroes. And I've seen that video from the mask maker, and she's definitely a superwoman. That's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have a county manager's report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rodriguez. Justin Mates, Deputy County Manager here. Just wanted to highlight some additional things from the County Manager's office. A lot going on, but in the interest of time, I'll just pick some of the highest importance ones. So you know that the immigrant relief funds are available now, and we are taking applications, and that's through the Mission Asset Fund. I think you should all have this information, but if not, let us know. We can get you these links and everything if you want to distribute it. But we've received over 5,000 applicants so far, and nearly 2,500 individual awards have been made to date. We have a couple of testing days coming up next week on July 30th and August 6th. So we have, this is happening this time it's happening at Everest Public High School on 5th Avenue. That information is available on our website and those flyers. Hopefully you've seen them, but again, if you have specific questions on that, go ahead, feel free to reach out. Census update, wearing my census vest today. We're doing well. We're at our last 2010's numbers now, 73.4%, which is terrific because we still have some time left to get additional responses. Although the overall county number is good, we still have a lot of outreach to do among North Oaks communities where we know the response rates are lower, and so we can continue those efforts. And fortunately, we do have some more time to do that. But we can really, if we all try hard, we can really beat last 2010's numbers, which would be fantastic. Let's see. Maggie mentioned the eviction moratorium. The Great Plates program, which some of you may have be familiar with, it's the program where local restaurants provide meals to seniors who qualify. That has been extended by the state for another month through August. Well, it got extended about a week and a half ago. So now it's extended through August 9th, which is good news. let me see here. What else do I have of interest for you guys? Oh, following up on a request last time, a question, actually, I think it was from Commissioner Ruiz, who I don't know if is here tonight, but it was a question about the jail and if there had been any release of inmates. And I just wanted to just kind of summarize the process. There was early on an effort to reduce the census at the jail in light of COVID-19, and there was a process that was undertaken. Both there was revisions at the state level to the bail schedule, which kind of limited the number of people who might ultimately stay in jail prior to their hearing. But then the sheriff's office also worked with the justice partners, the DA, the private defender panel, probation, courts, and other law enforcement to look at the in-custody population and determine if there were any suitable releases that could be made. The sheriff's office looked at the particular circumstances of the inmates and balanced the risk of incarceration with the risk of public safety. Age, medical condition, and pregnancy were top priorities when reviewing the in-custody population. And then they also focused particularly on pretrial individuals with bail of less than $15,000. So that was a process that it's ongoing, but that was an initial process. I know there's a very specific answer, but that was something that was asked last time, and I promised to report back to the commission on it. It just overall COVID data, we're at, as you may have seen from our dashboards, we're at just over 4,400 total cases in the county since the beginning of the pandemic. We continue to see a disproportionately high infection rate among Latinos. It's dropping slightly for what it's worth, but obviously still disproportionate to the percentage of Latinos in our overall population. This is an issue that we're really seeing nationwide, but particularly in California. There's a number of reasons that the epidemiologists suspect for this, including a lot of frontline workers among the Latino population, difficulty with isolating or quarantining or having the resources to be able to isolate and quarantine effectively, and then certain kinds of industries are particularly hard hit, such as food service and construction. This is something we're aware of. We are doing, you may be aware of some of the targeted, micro-targeted outreach we've done to the Latino community in North Fair Oaks in Spanish. We've been doing that for weeks now and for months now. We're also going to be expanding that kind of micro-targeted outreach to Latino communities in other parts of the county, as well as to other vulnerable and at-risk groups who we are also seeing are very vulnerable to this pandemic. This continues to be an issue we're very sensitive to in the county, and trying to get appropriate resources to address it as best we can, and continue to monitor it and learn what we can from the academic institutions in the state and others who are studying this issue on a broader scale. And with that, I'm sorry it was a longer update than I intended, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much for the report, Justin. If council members have any quick questions, I'll welcome those. Otherwise, we can go on to council members' reports. If any of you have reports, please go ahead. I can get started by letting you know that we had a small committee to interview candidates for the North Fair Oaks Community Council. Last week, we did those interviews, and we selected 2 individuals out of the several applicants. And so since we have 2 seats vacant, essentially we have already filled those seats. They will be sworn in probably in a couple of months, hopefully within this year. It all depends. This still has to go to the Board of Supervisors for approval. And then after that, we will get the okay for the applicants to be sworn in as council members, and then they can join us. And what else? Last minute, just wanted to ask all the North Fair Oaks council members to please try to reply as soon as you can, as soon as you see the message from either Mitzi or Emma or Justin sending the agenda and the details for the meeting. It is important so that we can know who's going to be participating, if we're going to meet the quorum. So I would say, even if something happens later on where you have an accident or some issue that doesn't allow you to participate in the meeting, still please try to respond, and then you can still adjust your attendance. But it is important to reply as soon as you get that message with the agenda. And with that, I want to thank you all for your participation, your time, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.